Matthew here from miniwargaming.com, and it's time for another Sit and Talk. Today is Friday, August 1st, so happy August, everybody, which is really exciting because it means we're in the 8th month of this year. I don't know why that's exciting. I like when time moves forward because then I get to see stuff grow and I get to see stuff change. Lots of exciting changes, lots of exciting growth here at Mini Wargaming as well. Just a quick introduction to the show. The Sit and Talk is an Ask Me Anything show. You can ask me any questions about whatever you want. It could be about business, it can be about wargaming, might even get into religion or politics. So if you're easily offended by those things, please don't watch this. And all you have to do in order to ask your question is to post a comment in the comment section below on our website. If you're watching this on YouTube, there will be a link in the video description where you can go and post a comment. The reason I have it on our site is because it's just easier for me to print off and for everybody to upvote the ones that they really want. And then the way that I choose questions is everybody can go and upvote the ones they want. Don't downvote the ones that you don't want. It's just not nice. Just upvote the ones that you want and leave it at that. And then I usually get about the top 10 voted questions, and then after the top 10 are done, it's just randomly chosen from there. And so yes, the sooner you put your questions in, the more chances they get of being voted, but other than that, it's just randomly chosen, and so everybody has a pretty equal opportunity here, as long as you get your questions in on time. Sometimes I record this earlier than Friday, maybe like Wednesday or Thursday. So let's go through the questions. Kelendrill. Greetings, Matt. First question, can you do a video tour of the new studio layout now that the second room is complete? A view of your video making environment would be nice to see. The last such video was still during the time of your physical store. Yes, in fact, I already did one. It's rendering right now, and it will be going into the Open Vault, which is our Wednesday Vault show where we do it behind the scenes. We don't do it every Wednesday, but we do it on Wednesdays, so when we do have an Open Vault. So this coming Wednesday in the Vault, there will be behind the scenes where I walk around the entire studio and show that off. A second question, have you read the 40K series about Caiaphas Cain, an unlikely commissar turned hero? It is a more light-hearted series while still giving a good view of the grim 40K universe. Keep up the good work. No, I have not read that. I just finished the Gaunt's Ghost omnibus, and I just finished with Necropolis, which was fantastic. Had kind of a grim beginning, but then it really detailed this awesome epic battle on this planet in a hive city. So it was really, really, really well written. And so I think what I'm going to read next is the Eisenhorn series, because the very first thing I read was the Ravener series, and that was because I was at the bookstore in the 40K section looking at it, not really sure what to get because I had never read anything, and somebody else kind of walked up and started looking too, and he looked like a wargamer. And so I turned to him and I said, "Are you into wargaming?" And we talked for a little bit. And I asked him what he would recommend, and he recommended the Ravener series. And other people said, well, the Eisenhorn series actually should be read first. I didn't find that. I found that reading the Ravener series was fine. But now that I've read it, I really want to read the Eisenhorn series, because apparently it's really good too. So I think that's the next one I'm going to pick up. Trumpkin, not really a question, more of an idea. Mini Wargaming picks an army that might be unrepresented at the moment, and everyone who wants to sends a painted miniature from that army to you guys by post. Then when you get enough, you do a battle report of them versus the Mini Wargaming chapter of Space Marines. Mini Wargaming versus the fans. That's actually a really cool idea. You can do it for like Tau or underrepresented, maybe. I guess right now in 40K, the armies that we're not really representing really, really well would be, well, the Tau for sure. We don't have any Tau. Our Orc army is kind of rudimentary. Our Imperial Guard army has gotten, it's quite large now, but that was by buying a bunch of older armies from people, so it needs updates. It needs some of the newer models and maybe more flyers, like things just to kind of flesh it out. Well, there's lots of Space Marine chapters that we're not really representing right now, like Grey Knights and Space Wolves. I think those are the only two that have their own codexes that we don't have. And we are working on building up Space Wolves now. We're working on building a Space Wolf army that you'll start seeing in the next couple months probably. So I think that's it, because we have a good number of Necrons, good number of Eldar, lots of Tyranids, tons of Chaos. Even our Space Marine chapter has grown. I think I calculated it at, is that about 7,000 or 8,000 points now? Or it might be 8,000 or 9,000 points, all fully painted. So, and then we even have an Imperial Knight army. So that's pretty good. So yeah, that's not a bad idea. We'll see if we can do something like that. Slop Artist. Matt, I watch people stand up and walk out of the latest Transformers movie, and it was showing on a plane. That's pretty funny. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to bother going to see it. I kept getting sucked into watching, well, not kept. I finished up the second one. The first one was pretty bad, but it was okay. But it's pretty bad. And then I was like, I'm not going to see another one, though, because I don't know, it just wasn't that good. And then I finally just had nothing else to watch, and so I watched the second Transformers, and I was just mad. I was like, oh, what a waste of time. So I did not go and see the third one, and I will not go and see the latest one. It's one thing to be like, the Star Wars movies weren't that good, but I'll go and see them anyways because it's Star Wars, and how else am I going to get my Star Wars fix? But I don't care about Transformers as much. Like I kind of watched them as a kid. I played with some of their toys as a kid. They're very iconic, but I really don't. I'm not like, oh, I need to get my Transformers fix. It's like, no. So if they're bad movies, I'm just going to stay away. Don't believe in. Well, it's not really a matter of supporting or not supporting. I think, you know, the critics and everything else can show when a movie is doing well and when it's not doing well. So it's not like I have to personally be like, no, I'm not going to support the Transformers. Like it's just, I don't want to see it. It's that bad. Necronomicon. Matt, do you hope, as I do, that Forge World wraps up the Horus Heresy character series with a model and rules for the Emperor? Yes, that would be pretty awesome, because he's pretty epic. Dr. Glubina. Hello, Matt. I know you don't like Dark Eldar lore much. Oh yeah, that's the other army we don't have represented. But really would like to see them in some battle reports or even campaigns, as well as some other factions that are deprived by our attention. Example, Adeptus Sororitas, Inquisition. Any perspectives? Well, Dark Eldar is not going to happen. Ever. I'm pretty sure of it. As for Sisters of Battle, I actually have somebody who just recently moved here who has a big Sisters of Battle army. He's talked to me about coming in for a campaign, so we're probably going to film that campaign in September. So we are going to have a Sisters of Battle campaign. I've mentioned this before. When is it going to come out? I don't know. It all depends on our schedule, because now we're actually getting really into the rhythm of things, and we're producing stuff sometimes a month or two in advance of when we actually start posting. Like, for example, if I were to make a battle report today for 40K, it would go up 2 months from now, because we actually have 2 months of battle reports done, and that's really good. It has its disadvantages. Like, we'd like to get the current battle reports up right away, but that would be at the expense of regularity. And so we'd put out like 5 battle reports in a week and then none the next week, and it's just not good. We need to be regular and consistent. And so until we can be consistent with the number that we're doing, we can't increase the number that we're doing. And so now that we're a couple months ahead, that's really good, because it allows us then to focus on other content and get that ahead. And if a professional production studio, you should be ahead by a good margin. Now, I'm not saying that we should be like TV shows where they film and they're done months and months in advance, like sometimes even longer than that, or a movie which is done filming a year in advance and then it goes through all the post-processing stuff. I'm not saying like that. Like, we're not going to take ourselves that seriously. And on top of that, a lot of stuff is very time sensitive. Like, if we did Space Wolves a year from now, like if we did it right now and then posted it a year from now, it kind of misses that opportunity for its popularity. But if we do it 3 months from now, it's still good. I mean, you have a good shelf life for the new stuff, but a year is too much. So I would say, in my mind, it would be good if we were always 2 or 3 months ahead of ourselves. So we had like the next couple months of stuff already produced and ready to go out. And then we can interject time-sensitive videos, like behind the scenes of what's going on, or updates or reviews or whatever. Like those are a little different. But as for producing these videos, a lot of these videos, like battle reports and campaigns that are not as time sensitive, they can go out. Now, the only disadvantage is if you have stuff ahead of time and all of a sudden you find out that a new codex is coming out. Like, let's say we did a Space Wolves campaign a month ago and we were going to publish it a couple weeks from now, and then a new Space Wolves codex comes out and it's like, ah, shoot. Because that's happened sometimes. Like, we got ahead of ourselves with 6th edition battle reports, and then 7th edition came out, so we had to kind of dump them all out. But you can kind of make up for that. So it's tricky, let me just put it that way. Inquisition, I've been reading the Inquisition Codex because I think maybe the next campaign after the one that's going out right now, the Storms of Ixia, will feature at least an Inquisitor. I'm not necessarily going to have an entire army of Inquisition, because you don't really have the Inquisition army. Like, you could do Grey Knights or Sisters of Battle, and there's kind of the Inquisition in there. But Inquisitors really can operate in any Imperium army. They could be in an Imperial Guard army. They could be Space Marines. It doesn't really matter. You can, in fact, even the rules for allying them, you can have a single Inquisitor as an allied detachment. They actually have their own special detachment, and it requires 1 HQ, which is an Inquisitor, and it has an optional 2nd HQ, so another Inquisitor, and 3 elites. And the elites they basically only have 1 elite choice, and that's their war bands. And then the war bands have tons of different things in them, like the acolytes and the demon hosts and the Jokero guys, however you say that, the little orangutan looking things, and arcoflagellants and all those things. So you don't really usually make an army of just Inquisition. You totally could, but no, I'm pretty sure our next campaign will feature at least an Inquisitor. So we'll see. It also depends on how fast I can get some painted up too. Zudowak. Hey Matt, brand new Vault member here and loving it. Thank you. I didn't recognize your username. So, of your 2 main armies, Tyranid Necrons, I see you comment a lot on Tyranid lore, but you don't seem to really talk about Necron lore. Is there anything about the Necron lore that drew you to that army, and if so, what? I would love to hear your thoughts on Necron lore in future videos. I'll be honest, what drew me to the Necrons, because I needed to make a second army because I needed to diversify for the videos. What drew me to the Necrons was they'd be easy to paint. That's actually why I chose them. I'm like, because I was still painting my own miniatures back then, because we didn't really have the option. We didn't have our painting partner program. We hadn't thought of that at that point. And so it really wasn't an option to farm out our painting, because it would cost too much. So I chose them because they were easy to paint. Lore-wise, I like their lore. But to be honest, the lore is not as fantastic as Tyranids, because Necrons really just feel kind of like robotic humans. Now you might think, well, duh, they are robots, but I mean, like, their old lore, they were more slaves of the Catan, and the new lore, they kind of have the diversity of humans, although you kind of play them a little more calculating, but really they play just like humans. Like, when you really look at their fluff and their lore, they're just humans with a different culture and different technology, and I kind of like that in a way, because it gives them let me just put it this way. It would be really hard, not impossible, but hard to do a narrative campaign where the Tyranids were the heroes of the campaign. And by that I mean they're like the main thing. Like, every campaign, as a GM, I kind of play the NPC, the non-player character. So you look at the Fate of Fayoum. The heroes were the Necrons. Even though I know when I say heroes you think good guys, and Necrons aren't good guys. But the heroes of that campaign were the Necrons, and the villains were the Tyranids. So it was all about the Necrons defeating this Tyranid foe, or in the case of Fate of Fayoum, failing to defeat the Tyranids. And then we had Snagabog's Greed, and that was the heroes were the Blood Angels overcoming the Orcs. And then with Primogenitor's Promise, I think you would look at it as like it's the heroes of the Chaos. I think that's how I put it, although that one's a little different because he kind of just had them both sides, but it looked more like the Chaos were trying to defeat the Eldar. So it's always like that. So it'd be hard to do a campaign where the Tyranids are that main focus, because they don't really have personality, and that's what makes them terrifying. So it'd be hard. Like, I try to throw a bit of personality into them, like, you know, this Broodlord or this Death Leaper is now really keen on hunting down that guy, not because he has a vendetta against him, but because the hive mind senses this thing. And so he kind of acts like somebody trying to get revenge, but that's not really his motivation, but it kind of plays in that way. And so it'd be hard to have the Tyranids as the main one. But so the Necrons being so human-like, and yet alien, and different technology, and different methods, and pretty much always evil, it makes them more interesting to be able to kind of do stories with. I know, like the way they were before, they're basically just like Tyranids. You know, they didn't have any individual will. They just kind of went out as a horde, and they were unstoppable, unthinking, just this machine. And we already have that with the Tyranids. So they're just basically a metal version of the Tyranids, except for the Catan. The Catan were individuals who were controlling this all. But so they were too similar, and so you just didn't have that. So whereas if you make them like humans, you might think, well, that's similar to Chaos or Space Marines or Imperial Guard. But the nice thing about humans is we're so familiar with humans that we can see the diversity there. Whereas when we create alien races, we tend to kind of just put them under one category. Like Klingons are all honor-bound warriors, and you get the, there's always stories about the pariahs, those who don't fit in, but as a whole, they all very fit under this one cookie cutter kind of look. Whereas humans, they have, you could have people like Klingons, and then you have people like Romulans, and Romulans are all the conniving, all trying to expand their empire, except for those few exceptions. And then you have the Cardassians, who are basically like the Nazi Germans from World War II, and then you've got like well, you got the Borg, which are the Borg. They have a reason for all being the same, because they're one big collective. There's one other, the Ferengis. The Ferengis are all sexist, chauvinistic pigs who are all merchants. So they all fall under, like when we create aliens, we have a hard time giving them the variety. In Mass Effect 1, I loved it. There was I'm not sure if you played Mass Effect 1, then you know what I'm talking about. Their loading screen is basically an elevator. Every location has elevators that you take, and those elevators are where it's loading in the background. But while it's going in the elevator, it's you and always two of your companions, and you choose which ones are coming with you. And there's always little conversations that go on, and it kind of develops their characters a bit more. One of your companions is a Krogan, who's basically this big monster who, falls. That race kind of falls under the whole brutal warriors kind of thing. And you're in an elevator ride, and the one human that's with you comments to the Krogan saying, how he's different, and he didn't expect him to be like this. And the Krogan replied by saying, oh yes, humans can have an infinite variety of personalities and character traits, but the Krogans can only have one. And it's kind of making fun of how we do fiction. And we see it everywhere. Fantasy, elves are a certain way. Elves are the elegant craftsmen that take care of the forests. And dwarves are the delvers, and it works for us because we can compartmentalize them and they become something. Whereas if you just make them human-like, then they're just a human with different form. So I get why we do that. I'm not even saying it's a bad thing. And so I like that the Necrons are more human-like, because it gives them the range of emotions and just variety that you need in order to make really good stories for them. So I do really like the Necron lore for that reason. And then all the background stuff, like how they fought back with the Catan against the old ones, and then there is the Eldar as well. Like, it's all very interesting stuff when you read it all. Algerdus. Hey Matt, have you considered making a review of the new Imperial Armor 4 Antlion Project about Tyranids? I don't know if I'll review it. I'm definitely going to get it. And some people have asked, and it might even be a question in here. Some people have asked if I would actually do the Antlion Project as a campaign. And probably not, because I don't like just doing somebody else's campaign, because it's kind of already preset what's supposed to happen, and I don't like preset campaigns. But I like the idea. So I might do an Antlion-like campaign where it kind of has the same setting, and then we kind of see where it goes from there. And we let the campaign dictate, the battle reports dictate the direction of it. And so we create our own story, but with the same premise, which is the Antlion Project is basically that the Imperium is secretly on this one moon studying some Tyranids, and they get some organisms, and eventually those organisms reproduce and create a large force, and it causes problems. So it's a very horror-esque type of campaign, because it actually starts with an Imperium force arriving at the moon because they lost communications with it, and they're going down and trying to find out what happened. And they go down and everything's abandoned, kind of like that whole Aliens kind of thing, where you first look around and where is everything, and then slowly the aliens crop up, and then it escalates into a big fight. Red Raptor, here's a political question for you, Matt. Over the course of many thousand or even millions of years, which 40K race do you think has developed the most effective or efficient method of governance and or leadership? The Ethereal Caste, the Adeptus Administratum, Orc culture, Necron Dynasties, etc. Okay, well, if you're talking about, if there's effective and efficient, and then there's it's good for the people kind of thing. Because if you look at Orc culture, they're definitely efficient. incredibly efficient. It's very, very basic. And that works because all the orcs conform to it. And so it's like the reason that it's efficient, though, is not because of the design of the system. It's because every orc conforms to it. Like, any system would work incredibly well if everybody agreed to how it would work and just followed. Even if it's a bad system, it would work well if everybody agreed and did exactly what they're supposed to with it. So in that case, I would say the orcs probably have the most efficient. Now humans, now the problem is this is the grim dark future, so nobody's happy. Everybody's at war, and if you're not at war, you soon will be. There's obviously, if we really delve down to the individuals, we might find happiness outside of the hive cities and all of that, more in other areas. But it really comes down to it's a grim dark future. So, but when we look at the Adeptus Administratum, the way that they govern the entire galaxy, they kind of have, they have a dictatorship kind of rule where the Emperor's might is there, but then you have like the Adeptus Administratum with all their High Lords of Terror and everything else like that. But really, the galaxy is too vast a place for there to be like one government. And so their method of government is, we've got our rules in place, the tithe that each planet has to give us, but really when it comes down to it, each planet has their own governor who has their own method of rule, and the Imperium will just leave them alone as long as they follow the basic rules, which is pay your tithing and give the certain amount of troops in order to bolster the Imperial Guard, and don't succumb to chaos. That's really it. It's really it too. And you know, the agricultural worlds, make sure you give the amount of food you're supposed to. The forge worlds need to give the amount of output. So there's individual worlds that have it. But the two main rules are, make sure you pay your tithe of Imperial Guard troops, and don't succumb to chaos. Other than that, so that's efficient as well if you look at it that way, because every planet is independent. And so then you have to then delve to each planet and say, is that method of rule efficient? Because one governor might be a dictator, another one might actually set up like a council of people and then make it more like a republic or democracy. And others might be, some governors might be evil and just want to pad their own wallets and give themselves lives of luxury and not care about the rest of the hive. Or others might actually care about their people and do their best for it. You're going to find all of that spectrum in the galaxy. So in a sense, the overall Adeptus Administratum is actually very effective as well, because it leaves the local rule to the local rulers and just has their basic thing in place. So if you really look at it, the Adeptus Administratum provides it's the very basic that the government needs to provide. So if you look at any governmental system, and for real, why is a government formed? Well, the government is formed primarily for protection. And then we add on all this other stuff later on, like education and social services and roads and all that. All the stuff that kind of falls out of private things, or, you know, sometimes people don't like the fact that it's not private, but it doesn't matter. We're not going to argue that. And so the very fundamental, the two fundamental things that a government needs to provide is protection through their army and laws to maintain order. And so the Adeptus Administratum definitely provides the protection. They are the ones that administer the Space Marine chapters and the humongous Imperial Guard machine. And so, and that's basically all they do, really. I know there's tons more that they do with everything else, but really when it comes down to it, they leave a planet kind of to it. As long as the governors is bolstering the Imperial Guard and not succumbing to chaos and providing whatever that world is supposed to provide, they'll be like, you know what, we're not going to worry about that. So you go for that. And then you have the Inquisition, who just kind of go out and do whatever they want. So that seems kind of effective. The Ethereal case, I'm not as familiar with Tau lore as I'd like to be, so I can't really comment on them. The Necron Dynasties are probably the least efficient, because everybody bickers and does their own thing and nobody's really united. The Orc culture, I guess you could say, is less efficient because they're not united, but it's just that the Orc culture works. It's self-sustaining. And it just works in almost any environment. They're very survivable in almost any environment because of the system. So yeah. So I think that's my thoughts on a few of the politics of the grim dark future in 40,000 years from now. Comrade Wargame CWG. Hey Matt, if you ever need a model to be painted ASAP, do you just throw it at Chris and lock him in the painting dungeon until it's done? Also, I remember you mentioning the idea of doing a narrative campaign for fantasy. Wouldn't work doing a narrative campaign for fantasy wouldn't work, and me and my group have been doing them for nearly a year and enjoying them. Lastly, when your show used to be live, someone had asked your crew to do a campaign, and you said, maybe in the far, far future, and thought it was pretty cool. It actually ended up happening. Thanks for everything. No, I don't usually get Chris to paint it. I have other painters that I might actually hire to do it, so that it goes to the front of their queue and they get it done fast. The past couple things that I've really needed done fast, I've gotten Cody from Cold Painting Table to do. And yeah, it's kind of funny that we said, no, I don't know, we're going to do campaigns for a while. So there's always those ideas that get planted in our minds, and then eventually we're like, maybe we should try that and see what happens. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back. Well, to you, it'll just be immediate. Okay, I'm back. So for this next question, I'm going to make a sit and talk FAQ from it. So here we go. It's time for another Sit and Talk FAQ. This is the show where I just take a question from my longer 1 hour Ask Me Anything Sit and Talk show, and I publish it for everybody to see, because sometimes it's easier just to break them out. If you want to see the entire show, there'll be a link in the video description below. So this one is from Rob Hobb. Hi Matt, have you read about the last financial report of Games Workshop? Also, what do you think about Tom Kirby, the CEO, stepping down? I see this as a big chance for Games Workshop to change their way of business, especially with the community handling. Greetings, Robert. So this is not necessarily something that you'd be interested in knowing, because you definitely want to know my point of view, but a lot of people are curious about this whole situation. And so I just want to kind of chime in my 2 cents. So first off, what happened? If you're not aware, Games Workshop, being a public company, has to publish their financial reports for everybody to see. And they do one at a half year and at a full year. So at the end of every July, they have their financial report, because their fiscal year is from July to July. I think the beginning of July to the beginning of July. And so in that financial report, the CEO, Tom Kirby in this case, has his preamble, where he basically prefaces the whole financial report with his thoughts of how things are going. And this one is particularly interesting, because at the very beginning of it, he says, we've had a good year. Now, if by good, and he even put it in quotations, you mean the numbers are good, then maybe you don't agree. And that statement right there is causing a bit of a commotion, let's just say, because you can't say you've had a good year when your revenues are down and your profits are down. Now, profits can be down and you can still say you had a good year, because he made a lot of points of how they've been investing in certain things and spending on certain things, and so those things are not something that happens every year. And so if it's just a temporary thing, like, hey, we spent an extra £4 million on the website, or we spent an extra 10 million restructuring or whatever. And if that's just a one-time thing and it's meant to save you money in the long run, then yeah, that's a good thing. But the problem is the financial report shows that it's not just profits that are down 42%, I believe it is, but revenues are down too. Now, I'm not the type of person to be like, oh, the revenues went down, I guess this signals the end of Games Workshop. Because any company is going to have ups and downs, especially when they're well established. See, when you have basically, when you look at the life of a company, from beginning to possible death when it's sold to somebody else or goes, or whatever happens, typically at the beginning you have rapid growth. Or maybe at the very beginning you have slow growth, but there's always a stage where you have rapid growth, and year after year you can report growth. Hey, we've grown by 10%, we've grown by 15%, we've grown by 50%. Like for us, for example, our vault has doubled, I think, 3 years in a row. Now, anybody who knows mathematics knows that you can't continue doubling year after year after year. And so eventually, because if you just double 10 years in a row, it just becomes astronomically huge. Like it's like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, and 1,024 times bigger than when you started. So like, that's huge. That's a huge growth. Like doubling over 1 year to the next. Like if you're making $10 the 1 year, and then you make $20 the next year, you can be like, hey, I doubled. And it's like, well, big deal. You only really went up by 10 bucks. But if you double again, it becomes 40. And it's like, well, not a big deal. Then you double again and you double again. You only have to do that a few times. In fact, 10 years. And that $10 becomes $10,000. And then the year after that, it becomes $20,000, then $40,000, then $80,000. So you get this, you just can't maintain that type of growth. So when a company, once it kind of has done that rapid growth for a while, it'll hit, it's not always a plateau, because you can usually continue to grow because markets grow. There's more people who are born and come into the market, or new technologies, or whatever happens to be. But once you're well established, it's hard to maintain growth year after year after year. Games Workshop for the past few years has been doing a lot of restructuring in order to increase their profit margins. Things like shifting from their expensive stores that would have several employees in a mall, which is like premium lease, to their one-man operations that are in a strip mall. So it's much cheaper, and they don't have to make as many sales in order to have for the store to make as much as it did before. And so revenues can go down a bit, but since their profit margin went up so much, there was growth in the business, although it wasn't a growth of number of customers as much as it was a growth of profits. And so this is what they've been doing for the past few years. And so I'm not so much interested in, like, it's interesting to see the revenue and the profit, but it's more looking at what they're doing and then seeing the results of what they're doing. For example, they restructure from the 5-6 man stores to a 1-man store, or they increase their prices by a large margin over a course of just a few years, or they really push their web store. They start making more things direct only, forcing people to buy it right from them, which is a much higher profit margin than if they buy from an independent retailer. Or shutting down web stores in Canada. Now that's a small one, but like years ago they did it to the United States, and they restructure the UK one whenever they can to try to squeeze out the web stores as much as possible because they want to be the only ones selling online. Or, and here's a big one, increasing the number of products that they release. If you've noticed over the past year or two, there's been a rapid increase in the number of codexes and editions of the rules that have come out. Like the 7th edition, if we want to call it that, came out only 2 years after 6th edition, whereas 6th edition came 4 years after 5th, and most of the time it was about a 4 to 5 year span. But this one was only 2 years later that they did this new edition, and now they're doing all sorts of new things. And so you would expect, if you're increasing the number of products that you're releasing and you're rapidly releasing this, that your revenue wouldn't go down, that would be a year where you could actually see revenue go up as you're selling more products. But revenue didn't go up. So that is more a key indicator to me that, you know, if revenue just goes down from one year to the next, not a big deal. It's going to happen. It's going to go down one year and up another year. You're just going to have, there's some randomness to it that you don't really have any control over. Like, you might say, well, it's competitive stuff, and yes, all those things factor in, but sometimes it's just random. How many people sign up today for the vault as opposed to tomorrow? It'll be partially due to what we post, but it'll just be partially due to who happened to be watching that day, who happened to log on. Like, we can release the best content on a day, but if there's certain people who just didn't even, maybe their internet was down, and so they didn't even look at it, so they couldn't have signed up. Whereas the day after that, they are able to sign up, and then they see it and then they want to sign up. So it's just, there's always a random element to everything. And so a lot of that randomness kind of averages out because you're on a large scale, but it's just you're going to have ups and downs. And so you don't have to be like, oh, their revenue went down, this is the beginning of the end. It's more their revenue went down even though they released a lot more products. And that's indicating something right there. Their profits went down, partially because there was more investments, but also partially because their revenue went down. And their profit margins actually decreased a little bit. They went from like 24% to 29%. Sorry, the other way around, 29% to 24% or something like that. I can't remember what it was. Or that was their cost. I can't remember. Their profit margins had a slight decrease as well when you look at the financial reports. So it's interesting to see. I'm not saying Games Workshop is going out of business. What I am saying is over the past few years, they have definitely lost customers. Because the last time I noticed this happen was over the course of a couple of years, they had done some rapid price increases, which of course everybody was like, oh, they're so expensive. It's a niche product. They can price it wherever they want as long as people are buying it. So I don't have a problem with that. What is interesting though is they pretty much doubled their prices, but their revenue remained the same. And so for some people, it's like, okay, they're continuing on business as usual, but they're not, because if you double the price of something and make the same amount of money, you've sold half as much as what you sold before. Like if you have something that costs 50 bucks and 1 year you sold 100 of them, and so you made $5,000, right? And then the next year you raise the price from $50 to $100, and you make $5,000 again. Hold on. Yeah, if you make $5,000 again, so it's no longer $50, but it's $100, then you've sold 50 of them instead of 100 of them. And so you might say, well, look, the numbers are just as good. In fact, the profit margins are better because we sold less products but got the same amount of money. So yeah, your profit margins are going to look great. Your shareholders are going to be happy with the dividends that you're paying out. But in the end, you lost half your customers. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily, but probably in this market. In other markets, sometimes you want to cut out the fat. You want to cut the customers who cost you more money than they make you. There are some industries where you want to do that. If you're a service industry, for example, let's say you are a web designer or whatever, and you have that one client who comes to you with little stuff, just the $50 jobs, but he's really nitpicky about everything, so it ends up just not making you very much money. And then you have this other client who comes to you and he's like, here's a $50,000 web design job, and he gives you the good outline, and so you're able to get it done at a kind of really efficiently because it's a larger job. Well, you'd rather have more of those large ones, not because they make you more money, because you could make that much money with lots of little clients, but because they are more profitable that way. And so less customers can make you more money. But the problem with that in this industry is that it's kind of cyclical, that if you have less customers, then they have less people to play against. And one of the strengths that 40K and fantasy have always had that other games didn't is that when you wanted to get into miniature wargaming, most likely you'd find that your friends or other people were playing 40K or fantasy, and they weren't really playing anything else. So you might like War Machine or Infinity or something else, but unless you're really willing to put in the effort of recruiting other people, which is a lot of work, I can tell you that, you're just going to be like, okay, I like these games, but I'll play 40K because everybody else plays it, and I'd rather play a game and have players to play against. But if you have less customers, there's less of those people. Like, for example, in this area right here, this is only anecdotal, this is not like this, the rest of the world is like this, but around here, it's easier to find War Machine players than it is to find 40K players. That wasn't true 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it was the opposite. It was hard to find War Machine players and easy to find 40K players. And so if that's a result of having less customers. Now, why there's less customers is a whole other subject, and I'm not even going to bother trying to get into that. All I'm saying is that if you raise your prices and your revenues remain the same, you've lost customers. Your profit margins go up and it looks good, but in the long term, that's going to hurt a business like Games Workshop because they rely on getting into those niches as much as possible. And if you lose your people, you're all of a sudden not able to find those other people who would sign up, who would become customers and make you even more money. So that's a bad thing. So on top of that, now we have this year where they've released even more products, and yet their revenues didn't just stay the same, they actually went down. And so once again, I'm not saying they're going out of business. I'm just saying that their market share is decreasing, and that is very apparent. And it's going to continue to decrease. And now the second question of Tom Kirby stepping down, I don't really have any personal quarrels, or I neither like nor dislike Tom Kirby. That's what I'm going to say right now. I don't really know him at all. I read the preamble, but reading like one cover or one letter from him or other stuff from him is not necessarily going to give you a full detail of his character and how he works in the company. It was interesting. He's very casual. He says some weird things in it, like, we had a good year if you don't look at the numbers, is basically what he said. He also said, we don't do any market analysis or research, and we don't need to. That's kind of a scary thing to say. Your shareholders who don't know your market necessarily, who are just shareholders, are going to look at that and be like, you don't do market research? You just release products willy-nilly? And you just think, well, these are awesome products. We know that, and so their market's going to love them. And you're not going to do it? You know, I don't necessarily think that he needs to do market research, but pointing it out in your preamble, when your financial report already looks bad, maybe not the best idea. Just putting that out there. And there's a few other little things in there as well that just it comes across as a little too casual for somebody who's announcing that they're down 42% in their profits. They're still profitable though, so there's still money that was made. They weren't in negative profits, so it's you know, they're not dying. They're not going to die. They're too big a company now. If they did do worse and worse, and eventually they're either going to get bought out by another company who will be able to restructure, or there will be major changes. Like, who knows? So Tom Kirby announces that he's stepping down as of January 1st, and he puts in some interesting things about how another CEO will be chosen, which was also interesting because I'm not sure if he was serious in there, because it was kind of weird. He's like, write a letter. We don't care about your resume. Write us a letter and we'll do interviews, and then we're going to choose a CEO. I don't know if he was being serious about that or if it was more just him being a little, joking around about, casually choosing a new CEO kind of thing. So he's stepping down. What do I think about that? I think it'll be interesting. I'm kind of, in a way, excited that there's going to be a change and hoping that a new CEO will see things differently and do things differently, because there's a few things that I really think Games Workshop could improve on. Product-wise, they're great. I love their products. You can complain about rules, you can complain about stuff, but in all, they do a really good job with their products. But things like, just a lot of things like social media, they seem to have a hard time with. They just started using YouTube, but they still have comments disabled. And that's kind of a big deal, especially when they also deleted their main Facebook page when they started getting negative stuff on it. Like, that's not how you deal with social media. Social media is the way things are now. I'm not saying it's going to be their primary source of income, because they obviously have built a big business on the backbone of a lot of retail stores and independent retailers and all of that. So that is, and trade shows and all that kind of stuff. That's the way that you could build it. But online has increased a lot over the past 10 years. And they can't just ignore that. And they haven't totally. They've started posting really good videos on YouTube. They started using Facebook for all their stores. They updated their web store. Whether you like it or not, they updated it. People are always going to have opinions on what's good and bad web design, I can tell you that. And most people don't have any idea what they're talking about, because it's actually still in its infancy. It's only about 20 years old at most. And so a lot of people are still trying to figure out what is good web design. And as soon as we figure out something, there's a big disruption. Like, all of a sudden, iPhones and iPads and tablets and smartphones come into the market and totally change the way you have to even think about web design. And so it's not that people are dumb and don't know what they're talking about. It's more that it's just so early that what is a good website is a big question. So let's review what I think about this. Games Workshop financials, not looking very good, especially when you consider the things that they've been doing over the past few years. Tom Kirby stepping down, I'm happy for that, because I just want to see more of a change than just, and I don't disagree with all his restructuring or making the stores one-man stores. I don't disagree with that. I don't agree with it either. I don't really know much about it to really be able to comment. Restructuring, getting rid of all their middle management and consolidating that, was that something they should do? I don't know. They think so, so maybe it was a good choice. All I know is that they've increased the amount of products they're putting out, they've increased their prices over the past few years, and their revenues aren't any better for it. In fact, this year they're a little worse. And that is where it shows a little troubling signs there. And then on top of that, Tom Kirby announcing he's stepping down. And when you actually look at his personal income, it actually went up this year, like almost doubled. Even though the financial report is worse, his income doubled, which I thought was interesting. Maybe I'm missing something in there, but that doesn't really matter, because it's only still a small portion. It was only by £500,000, something ridiculous like that. So anyways, so that's my thoughts. So we're going to end FAQ here. All right. Trading card game 1. Hi Matt, I need your help. I want to start my first Warhammer 40k army, and I don't know which army to choose between Necrons and Tyranids. It's very simple. Choose the one that you are attracted to the most. By attracted to, I mean, like, you look at them and you're like, I just love the look of the Necrons. Or when I read the lore of the Tyranids, I love that. So you got to choose based on that. Just what excites you the most. Which one are you most excited about? That's what you choose. I'm not going to tell you which one's stronger. I'm not going to tell you which ones are more competitive in tournaments, or which ones are easier to paint. Like, you whatever you're most excited about. This is a hobby. This is entertainment. You do what you want to do based off of what you feel like you want to do. Because I've had people ask that before. It's like, I don't really feel like playing this anymore. What do I do? It's like, well, don't play it. Go do something else. Maybe you'll want to come back to it. But really, it's a hobby. It's not our life. It is a hobby. It's meant to be the thing that relieves stress, and that is a good offset to the work that you do at work and the time you spend with your family, and then you have your entertainment and your hobby as well. That kind of, it's a part of a healthy life. It is not the life. And I know some people are like, but wargaming is my life, or you might think it's my life. No, it's my job. It's a 9-to-5 thing. I do read stuff afterwards too, because I do enjoy it. But in the end, I wouldn't say that I'm defined by it. You know, I'm more concerned about family. I'm more concerned about my church responsibilities than I am about this. Not that I'm not concerned about this, it's just more a method of priorities. Chab J5. I understand that you want to be regular with your content, which is why when you do start covering fantasy, etc., it'll be a regular, solid thing. I totally understand this, but had an idea. I know that you have your studio booked up pretty much the whole time. Could you have a few hours every week that is a roaming slot that you use to cover games completely non-regularly? Smaller, less popular games in this roaming slot. The slot could even be bi-weekly or even less regular. Just a thought. I can flat out say the answer to that is definitely no. And the reason for that is, it might seem a simple thing to be like, yeah, just cover this little game. But all of a sudden you got to learn the rules, you've got to collect the models, you've got to find people to play against. It takes an immense amount of effort to learn a new game. And I've recently experienced that in the past year with Infinity. There's a lot of effort involved in we're barely covering Infinity. It's like battle reports every 2 or 3 weeks is what we're managing to get out right now. And that took a lot of effort to get into because there's so much. When you get into a new game, there is so much. It's that initial part that's actually the biggest investment. Once you're into it, then it becomes easier to make more battle reports. So the answer there would be definitely no, at least for now. Peter Gooding. Hey, Matt. Hey, Peter. Please help. Up until now, I haven't had much in the way of flyers in my Tyranid army, just a brood of gargoyles. So I purchased a Harpy Hivechrome model, but I'm not sure which one would be best to build, bearing in mind that it would be my main flying creature. Also, are you going to put up any more Shadows in the Warp episodes? Many thanks. If I had to choose just one, either the Harpy or the Hivechrome, I'd probably choose the Harpy. Overall, it's going to do more for you. As for Shadows in the Warp, yes, I'm definitely going to do more. It's one of the Friday shows, and so we have Friday shows booked up for a little bit, and I actually booked solid with battle reports. But in the next couple of weeks, I should be able to make more, and you'll start seeing more of those. It's kind of it's not a regular show like it's going to be every other Friday. It's more that every Friday we have a show, either Reign of Chaos or something like that, or Shadows in the Warp. Nate Marius. Hi Matt, I know you said you weren't going to be doing any Dark Potential for quite a while, but I do love the models. I have a box of Reclaimers and I'm trying to get my local club into the game. I'm looking forward to the day it expands, or at least the rules get updated. You said that you would need a lot of money to continue creating it, and we all understand that. But have you ever thought of starting out small? For example, having something like a Dark Potential tip jar in your store. I know this wouldn't fund the production of new models, but the money would go towards the creation of things like Dark Potential themed dice, templates, rulers, etc. They themselves would help raise a little revenue as well as help keep people invested in your product. I don't know if that would be the most efficient way to do it. See, instead what we're doing is we're building a stronger business with the vault. And then eventually that might provide the revenue. And that's going to provide way more revenue than just having a handful of people interested in it. On top of that, by having some sort of tip jar kind of idea where people could donate or kind of purchase things, it still puts more pressure on us to continue working on it. And I just don't want that pressure because we just can't right now. And so it really is just going to come down to what I said in the FAQ, which is it's on hold indefinitely. We'll come back to it when we can afford to and when we're able to. So, and that's where we'll have to just kind of lead it. So there's just too much else on the line. So yeah. UK's Deadhead. Hi Matt, just watched Mission 2B of Storms of Ixia. Sorry, I can't spell. But that battle alone was worth the subscription price. So 2B, that was the one. That was the fight for the Foundry, right? That was regrouping. Yeah, that's where Captain Wyzen led in a force against the Orcs in the Foundry. That was a pretty awesome fight. Also, you need to promote the platoon commander. Also, Khrushchev needs Khrushchev. I think I've actually changed his name. Khrushchev needs some special rules since he rolled a 1 the suspense. I'm not going to give anything away for those who haven't watched it yet, but yeah, Commissar Khrushchev is pretty awesome. Grucket Dasmasha. Hello Matt, I just recently bought a Vault membership. Well, my mom did. Awesome. Anyway, my grandma takes me to my different gaming clubs from the local G-Dubs that's an hour away from a club that's 15 minutes away. I really want her to know that I really appreciate her doing this. If you could make a shout-out video for her and other parents and grandparents alike who do this. Her name is Melanie. Thanks, Matt. You're the best ever. Well, I'm not going to make a separate shout-out video, but I'll say, Melanie, you are an awesome grandmother for taking your grandson to the different clubs. And he really appreciates that. And so do I, because we need the parents and the grandparents to help their kids enjoy these kind of things. And this hobby is so good because it keeps them, you know, you're not just playing computer games all the time. You actually get social interaction, and you get to increase certain of the fine motor skills too as you paint miniatures. And so it's overall, it's just I find it to be a really good hobby for teenagers to get into. Not that I'm against computer games. I love computer games. It's just more I'm against people just playing them for hours and hours on end every day, because I don't think that's really good for us. Uncle Willie, hey Matt, have you guys ever thought about doing an all v all with 4 people? So 4 people free for all? More or less the number was just to give a visual idea of what I mean. I don't like the idea of free for alls whatsoever. Although ironically, our narrative campaign is probably going to have a 3-way battle, but it's going to be done in a very specific way. But the idea of you just set up 4 players and say, go at it, it just, I don't know, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't have, unless you have like 2v2 is one thing. If that's what you're saying, all v all, like 4 people, if it's like 2v2, that's a different thing. And you might see that kind of stuff happen. But yeah, so it's just, we might do it occasionally. It just wouldn't be a regular thing for sure. Ice Cool, hiya Matt, how's it going? Here in Stavanger, Norway, is a record hot. I think the phrase you say in the beginning of your show is a little bit funny. If you're easily offended, don't watch, or something like that. Like, yeah, I can't talk about politics, I get really offended. Nobody will admit that. Yeah, but if I say it at least, if I'm like, we might talk about religion or politics, so if you're easily offended, please don't watch. It sets a tone. So even if people are like, I probably would be easily offended, but I want to watch anyways, then they feel like they are less able to post comments about being offended by certain things because I warned it, because other people will jump on them saying, he warned you, so why are you complaining? It's like saying, if you stay here, I'm going to give you spoilers, and you got 10 seconds to leave, and then they stay, and I give you a spoiler, and then you complain about spoilers, like, you just can't. So that's more why I do it. It's more to change the tone of the video and to change the tone of the comments. And for the most part, it's really worked. I'm sorry to say, yeah, hold on. Sorry to say that the other narrative wasn't that good in my point of view. The new one, Ixia, is really promising. I liked 1A and 1B. Because of course I'm a Vault member. Thank you, and the guys at Mini Wargaming, have a great summer. Yeah, the narratives are kind of like TV shows. You're going to have people who love certain ones and people who hate certain ones and people who are totally indifferent. And so it's interesting to kind of see that evolving. The Plasma Kid. Matt, what do you think a Necron Titan would look like? It would look like a ginormous pyramid, like just a really, really big monolith. So also, do you think GW or Forge World should make a megalith as a Titan? Yeah, I think they should make a megalith, period. I don't know if they would have a Titan, like a walking thing, like the Eldar Warwalkers, or the Eldar Titans, or the Imperium Titans. I don't think, that's not a Necron style kind of thing. You're not going to have like a Triarch Stalker just blowing up, like this, it just wouldn't make sense. But I could picture this huge megalith kind of monolith looking thing. That would work. Trinity Blazer, just about out of time. Hi Matt, considering that Lich Guard and Praetorians are the same cost without upgrades and have similar stat lines, how do you decide which one's the field? I don't really choose based on points cost. I choose based on function. Like, does my army need a fast-hitting jump infantry? And then in that case, the Praetorians. Or do I need something that's more slow, moves up the field, and provides cover to everybody else? Well, I bring Lich Guard. So it's not so much like, I don't look at 2 things that are the same points cost and be like, which one do I choose? It's more, what role do I need to fill? And that's how I choose my armies. And 2, do you enjoy listening to Christian radio stations like K-Love or Sound Life Radio? I don't listen to radio at all, period. So I guess the answer to that would be no. But not because I have anything against those stations, but because I just don't listen to radio. Robisag, hey, so what's the deal with the Steve dropping his Revenant Titan? Steve?
Yeah.
Did you drop the Revenant Titan?
Oh yeah, I destroyed the thing.
Like for real?
Oh yeah.
You mean, what Revenant Titan? Somebody's asking about
I
it.
bought a Revenant Titan. I was wall painting it.
The Revenant Titan, is that like the Forge World one?
Yeah, big guy.
Okay.
I bear hugged it and destroyed it, and they got angry at it, so I destroyed it more.
Oh.
Chris, I think Matt gave me the video about Chris falling on the floor when hearing about that story. There's some pictures of it and it's a pile of pieces.
So question. Is there any hope to see that magically come back from the dead?
A different one.
A different one?
A different one. yeah. Not that one's gone.
It's gone. All right. I'm not an Eldar player, nor do I support Eldar trickery, but it is sad to hear of a Titan bite in the dust. Unrelated, what do you think of the new Tyranid Damarkaran model and rules, if you have seen them? I've kind of seen a teaser for it, so I don't really have much of an opinion yet, but I'm excited for a new Tyranid model. I'm excited to get the Antlion Project. Would you ever consider doing one of the campaign? I already answered that. James King 6. Hello, Matt. First, I would like to give you a huge thank you to everyone at Mini Wargaming, past and present, for all the content and random fun that Mini Wargaming has posted throughout the years. You're welcome. Now for the question. I have been thoroughly enjoying the narrative campaigns that you've been posting, and I've been wondering, will you ever see the continuation of the Fate of Faeum story? Yes, definitely. Thank you, and if you had a chance to read this, James. Philistine Ow. Hi Matt, I bought a Morkanaut on impulse from eBay. I think it is a recast. Ooh. I've never played Warhammer 40k and I don't have any other miniatures. Should I get an airbrush to paint it or just use my brushes and paints? That depends. What are you good at? Are you good at using an airbrush? Then yeah, use an airbrush. If you're good at using a brush, use a brush. Someone offered me the orcs from Stormclaw for 60 bucks. Is that a good deal or should I just get an orc boys and mech? I have no idea how much a Stormclaw thing costs. So I can't really comment on that. Zuger Silver. Matt, first off, I want to say you have inspired me. Well, thank you. I received a dwarf army from a friend who got it in storage unit sale and I sold it for him. After a while, it made me miss the old Tomb Kings burning a hole in my attic. Tomb Kings should not be near fire. Yeah, they are flammable. At least their leaders are. After watching your Beat Map Bat Reps and Dave's How to Play Warhammer Fantasy with Owen, I believe, I became a Vault member. I used to work at a comic shop I grew up in and still have a key to the place, even though I no longer work there with owner's consent, of course. And the owner allows us to play after hours. She is so kind. To date, I have created a small league of friends and wargamers that include Tomb Kings, Bretonnians, Ogre Kingdoms, Skaven, High Elves, Dwarves, Wood Elves, Warriors of Chaos, and Beastmen. Whew. We have also made fully flocked modular tables and scenery. Just want to let you know what type of monster you have created. Good to know. I don't play 40k or any of the other mini wargaming covered games, but I understand that this is your bread and butter, and I'm glad to support the work you're doing. I am so glad to hear tangible plans are in the works for fantasy, and can't wait to see some Tomb Kings happening. Thank you for all you guys do, and always happy wargaming. Thank you. Pretty much out of time. There was one more question I had gone through, and I kind of wanted to read. I don't know if I printed it off, though. I only printed off the first few pages. Nope, don't have it. That's okay. Basically, the question was, I can't remember who wrote it, but they said, you know, is it going to be, you're going to wait till you have like 10,000 points of every 40k army before you do fantasy? The answer is no. There's nothing, they're kind of unrelated, because I'm going to continue covering 40k, so is Dave. And it's not like I'm going to stop covering 40k to cover fantasy, so it's more as where we expand the vault and are able to hire more people who can then cover it. And we'll make sure they're good. We'll make very sure that they're good. Thank you so much for watching and submitting your questions and comments. Of course, if you want your question or comment answered, leave a comment in the comment section below. If you're on YouTube watching this, make sure you click on the link and leave a comment there. Thanks for watching. Happy wargaming.